Well, g'day and welcome to Dream Design Do TV. I'm your host, Peter Montgomery from the petermontgomeryshow.com. This week, we're going to ask Zaki a question. But before we do, I want to talk a little bit about Zaki. Now, Zaki's done the amazing thing where he created a $3 million property portfolio with 15 properties, but the amazing thing is he did it in a space of 3 years and with a low startup capital. So this week we're going to ask Zaki why he decided to invest in property over investing in shares. So Zaki, why did you decide to invest in property, mate?
Good day, Peter. That's a really good question. Shares over property, and I guess it ties in on many investors' minds. I think statistically, also, if you do some research on shares over property over a significant period of time, the share market and the property market, in terms of return of investment, actually perform in the same manner overall. That's over a significant period of time. However, the reason I chose property over shares, even though I was aware of that, was simply two reasons. The first reason is, like you mentioned, I started with a very low minimal savings. So I had to decide, okay, with the minimal savings that I had or the minimal startup capital, how much leverage or how much can I expose, in terms of capital to expand the portfolio I have. So I realized in the share market, if I was borrowing in the share market through, say, for example, marginal lending on a good share, for example, a blue chip share, the maximum maybe the banks would lend would be 50%. Currently, given the current, credit situations, if you're a good credit history and good applicant, you could borrow up to nearly 95% if you were investing into the property market. So, for example, let's just say that I wanted to borrow $500,000 worth of shares or $500,000 on property. When it comes to the share market, the bank would maximum give, say, $250,000, and then the other $250,000 would actually have to come in cash. And that was not the position I was in when I was starting off. Now, when you were to choose property, let's just say you want to buy a $500,000 property. Since the bank is going to lend you up to 95%, all you would do is need 5% of that $250,000, which is significantly less in terms of startup capital. And what that means is that using the strategy I use, we can borrow more using the less of, say, your own money and the bank's money, and then create a portfolio by using my strategy, which I discuss with my clients about creating equity, and then using that same strategy and then that same small deposit to continue to expand the property portfolio, which will be significantly much more in terms of how much you're holding in relation to property in comparison to shares. Now, that's the primary reason. The secondary reason that I'd like to highlight is simply the fact that the share market basically fluctuates by the second. And that's something I couldn't handle. I mean, it was just not in my personality to be able to take risks such as those, where one day my portfolio is worth this much and say the next following day it might have gone down, which is not good, or it might have gone up, which is exciting. But I just didn't want to handle that emotional roller coaster. So I just thought I'd go through the property investing cycle, because generally it takes about 3 months for a property to be completed in sale. So there's not going to be that fluctuation in comparison to the share market's daily movement. So in summary, Peter, why I chose property over shares is basically, one is the amount of leverage to get into the market and the low startup capital, and number two is to avoid the fluctuations.
Excellent, man. I always learn so much when I talk to you. So thanks for spending that time with me today, and I'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Peter.